Welcome back to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into something deeply unsettling. We are stepping into the shadows to explore a chilling true crime case. And honestly, it's a story so bizarre that the boundary between fiction and reality completely blurs. It's a case where a killer's own staggering arrogance might have been his ultimate undoing.
Just listen to this for a second. I tighten the noose with all my strength, the Japanese knife I sell on an internet auction. Now, this terrifying excerpt isn't just a piece of cheap pulp fiction. It's actually from a novel called Amok. But the question that's going to haunt this entire explainer is this. Are we reading a fictional thriller, or are we looking at a written confession?
Part 1. The Macabre Discovery, December 2000. Let's head to the freezing banks of the Oder River. When local fishermen stumbled upon something floating in the icy water, it turned out to be Dariusz Janiszewski. He was a 35-year-old entrepreneur who owned a small advertising agency, and he'd been missing for 4 weeks. When police finally recovered the body, the grim state he was in shocked even the most seasoned investigators. He was found almost completely stripped, and he bore severe signs of being beaten, starved, and brutally tortured for several days before he finally died.
But the most chilling detail was actually how he was bound. The killer used a highly sadistic method known as a backward cradle. So what this means is the victim's hands were tied behind his back and the rope was connected directly to a noose around his neck. In this agonizing position, literally any movement of the legs, any attempt to struggle at all, would cause the rope to tighten further around the throat. This horrifying torture method was clearly the killer's sadistic signature.
Part 2. A cold case closed. The perfect crime? With the trail gone completely cold, investigators were left asking if this was, in fact, the perfect crime. Investigators were completely frustrated, and honestly, it's easy to see why. The perpetrators left absolutely no physical evidence, no murder weapon at the scene, nothing. Dariusz's cell phone had completely vanished, there were 0 solid leads, and no one could establish any clear motive for why this well-liked businessman was targeted in the first place. With absolutely nothing to go on, the files were officially shelved by mid-2001. The case was basically cemented in the public mind as an uncrackable mystery.
Part 3. The written confession. Enter a monk. 3 years later, a pivotal twist arrived, one that would reopen those dusty, cold case files and completely shock the nation.
Enter Krystian Bala. He was a highly educated, globe-trotting photographer and philosopher who had a real penchant for postmodernism. In 2003, he self-published a novel titled Amok. The book itself is a dark, highly sexualized thriller, and it's centered around a megalomaniacal, nihilistic intellectual named Chris, who commits a brutal murder and arrogantly gets away with it. Now, the contrast here between the unreleased police facts and Bala's fictional narrative is absolutely terrifying. In real life, Dariusz was bound in that highly specific backward cradle, and the killer sold his missing phone on an internet auction. In the book, the fictional victim, Mary, is tied up in the exact same sadistic cat's cradle, and the killer sells the murder weapon on an internet auction. The narrative contained terrifying parallels and torture methods that had never been released to the public. It's like he couldn't help but brag about it.
Part 4. Following the digital trail. Tracking Crispy 7. Let's follow the digital breadcrumbs, because this is where the killer's arrogance truly begins to show. So, a detective decided to focus on the one thing missing from the crime scene, which was the victim's cell phone. Here is the rapid succession of clues they found. First, they traced the missing phone using its unique IMEI number. Second, they found it had been sold on Allegro, which is a popular Polish internet auction site. Third, they identified the seller's username as Chris7. And remember, Chris is the name of the killer in the novel. Finally, they matched that exact account directly to Krystian Bala. 285. That is the amount in Polish zlotys that Krystian Bala sold the phone for. Think about that for a second. He auctioned off the stolen cell phone of a brutally murdered man just 4 days after the disappearance for a mere 285 zlotys. And his digital arrogance is just staggering. He sells the phone in November 2000. He publishes the book with unreleased crime details in 2003. But here is the most shocking part. When a Polish Crime Watch TV show aired an episode about the unsolved murder, the show's website received hits from IP addresses in South Korea, Japan, and Singapore. These logins perfectly match Krystian Bala's travel routes while he was on a scuba diving trip in Asia. So he was literally tracking his own murder investigation online from across the globe with this sick, perverted sort of fascination. Part 5. The motive of jealousy. Uncovering the why.
Because beneath the mask of an eloquent intellectual lay a deeply dark core. The motive here was just pure pathological jealousy. Bala maintained obsessive control over his estranged wife Stasia. Even though they were separated, he actually hired a private investigator to monitor her every move. Well, he discovered that she had gone on a brief date with Dariusz Janiszewski. This became the direct impulse for his ritualistic revenge. The police proved this by finding a phone card that Bala used to call Dariusz's office the very morning of the abduction. It was the exact same card he used to call his own parents and girlfriend. Part 6, Fiction Meets Reality, The Verdict. This brilliantly illustrates the climactic downfall of a narcissist who truly believed his intellect placed him above the law. He actually thought he outsmarted the entire system. Let's summarize the unbreakable chain of evidence that prosecutors used to corner him. In digital forensics, they had the stolen phone sold directly by Bala's account, just days after the kidnapping. In telecom data, that phone card irrefutably linked Bala to the victim on the exact day he vanished. And circumstantially, his novel contained highly specific, unreleased torture details. Now, during the trial, Bala claimed he was simply a misunderstood, persecuted artist fighting for freedom of expression. But thankfully, the court saw right through that philosophical mask. The verdict was stark. Krystian Bala was sentenced to 25 years in prison for his role in planning and orchestrating this brutal murder. His arrogance became his absolute ruin. This case continues to cast a long, dark shadow over criminal history, leaving us with a truly haunting question. Was Amok just a boundary-pushing literary provocation, or was it exactly what the prosecutors believed? A written confession of murder, proudly bearing the killer's own name on the cover. I'll let you think about that one. Thanks for joining me on this deep dive, and I'll catch you on the next explainer.